new reaction from President Trump on the Omarosa recordings. The president literally just tweeting part one of what it seems to be a two-part tweet. We're waiting for part two. But here's part one. Wacky Omarosa, who got fired 3 times on The Apprentice, now got fired for the last time. She never made it, never will. She begged me for a job. Tears in her eyes. I said, okay. People in the White House hated her. She was vicious, but not smart. I would rarely see her, but heard, ... Part two to be continued any minute. Now, I'm sure New York Congressman Peter King sits on the House Intelligence Committee. First, let me just ask you, who in their right mind goes into the Situation Room at the White House, knowing cell phones are not allowed, and secretly records a conversation?
It's actually absolutely beyond me. I know anytime I go to the Trump White House, forget the Situation Room. You just walk into the cabinet room or for a meeting at all, you have to turn in your cell phone beforehand. It's just something, it's automatic that you do. To bring it into the Situation Room, to have a conversation with the chief of staff or to use any kind of recording when you're talking with the president, it's just, to me, really unheard of. There's been a lot of bad things you hear have gone on at different White Houses by different employees, but I don't know of anyone who used a recording device in the Situation Room. And I tell you, dealing with Omarosa, I don't know her that well, but I remember seeing her during the campaign. She was the most dedicated, enthusiastic, pro-Trump person you could want to meet. I remember before the Hofstra debate with Hillary Clinton, she was organizing things. She was getting all the speakers lined up. She was getting all the talking points out, and she was taking over meetings. Then I would see her at the White House. She'd be walking in the Oval Office and very friendly with everyone and totally dedicated to the president. I mean, she was consumed by her support for Donald Trump. So this is all really out of nowhere.
He has been just her #1 staunch supporter. I mean, he literally took her under his wing. As Rudy Giuliani said, he made her. All the insiders behind the scenes thought that her hiring was a complete joke, and the president took her in. We know that she didn't break the law by secretly recording her getting fired, and this morning on the Today Show, she shared the fact that the president seemed surprised that John Kelly went ahead and took those measures into his own hands. But what does it say about the secrecy in the White House, and what and how does somebody go into a Situation Room where cell phones are not allowed and get away with it? There obviously seems to be something gone wrong here.
Yeah, they have to tighten up that security. As I said, when you go to the White House just for a regular meeting, in the cabinet room, they're standing outside. There's a special location where everyone has to put their cell phone, and that's a non-classified open meeting. To go into the Situation Room, I would think they should have some kind of detection or something. I guess you can't be frisking every cabinet official walking into the Situation Room. You have some, level of trust, but there has to be some way that they can find a way to detect that, detect this, because again, Omarosa was sort of harmless, but you could have somebody who really knows what they're doing and has evil intentions.
Is discussed. So I mean, if Omarosa, former Apprentice, cast member, can actually sneak a cell phone into the Situation Room, that's alarming. Now, let me just get back to Omarosa, accusing the president of being a racist, because one has to wonder if she really thought the president, if she thought Donald Trump, her hero, her mentor, was really a racist, then why did she campaign for him? And why would she ultimately take a job and work for a racist?
Yeah, it's not just campaign for him. I mean, she was even behind closed doors saying how great the president, how great the candidate Trump was, what a wonderful man he was. And again, the few times I saw her at the White House, she was like, she revered the president. And it's one thing if you want to work for someone and you're putting up with something because you have to make a dollar. No, she was exuberant in her support for the president. So either she's a total hypocrite or she was delusional. I don't know what it was, but I mean, you couldn't have asked anyone to be more of a cheerleader, both publicly and privately, for President Trump than Omarosa.
All right, I want to move on to something that actually matters. Will he, won't he? Want to get to the question of whether President Trump will be sitting down with Robert Mueller. The president's lawyers have sent Mueller a proposal indicating that the president would actually take questions about collusion with Russia in the 2016 elections. Here is the sticking point, not about obstruction of justice after he took office. Giuliani basically says it would be malpractice, essentially, if he didn't put that out there, because obstruction questions could become a trap for perjury accusations. Should the president sit down with Mueller at all? What's your belief?
You know, PR-wise, it might help, but as a practical, not as a practical, as a legal matter, I don't know what the purpose is, unless there's a question that only the president can answer. But I would think that Bob Mueller must have all the information he could possibly need. I don't know whether there's any conflict in fact or conflict in testimony going to be. So I don't know what the president would add to it. Again, I think if Mueller has specific areas that he feels only the president can answer on factual issues, then they should maybe put that up and let Giuliani and the others know what the focus is going to be. As far as obstruction, if the president is carrying out his lawful duties to be going into intent of the president, and by the way, from what I know of the whole thing with General Kelly and Jim Comey, there was no obstruction. But even assuming, for the sake of argument, I think it's unconstitutional to be going into a president's motives if he's carrying out a lawful act.
Yeah, and you know, there are famous cases like Martha Stewart, Barry Bonds, that shows that obstruction can easily be used against somebody like the president, even though he may or may not be not telling the truth. The next thing comes timing, because Rudy Giuliani is now saying that he won't do an interview after September 1st in order not to interfere or distract from the midterms. If no interview, let's say, happens before that date, September 1st, does Mueller subpoena the president? And what would be the legal fallout if that were to happen? Let's remember, the president, a sitting president, cannot be indicted. So what would Mueller's move be next?
If he goes to subpoena, that would just drag this on for months and months and months. Again, you can have a debate among constitutional lawyers. I haven't practiced law in a while, but this, to me, is an issue that would end up going all the way to the Supreme Court. I believe the law would be on the president's side, but one way or the other, it would put this off, I think, well into next year.
All right, Congressman Pete King, thank you very much.